Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. He was 7:30, like every morning. A timid light filtered through the heavy white linen curtains of the vast mansion of the Delcourt, drawing blurred patterns on the old oak parquet flooring. This manor, lost in the heart of an immense estate bordered by hedges trimmed with military rigor, exuded wealth and cold. The high ceilings seemed to crush visitors, the gilded moldings whispered forgotten secrets, and the paintings of frozen faces reminded us that in this house, everything was under control, dead, but under control. In the master bedroom upstairs, a tall, straight figure stood before a mirror adorned with Florentine motifs. Victor Delcourt, 60 years old, a billionaire respected in the upper echelons of European finance, buttoned his white shirt with the precision of a surgeon. Each gesture was calculated, without emotion, almost clinical. He looked at himself without really seeing himself. His face, lined by years and ambition, betrayed no flaws. His eyes, a metallic gray, had learned never to waver. For over 40 years, Victor Delcourt had ruled the business world. He inspired respect, but above all, fear. His voice, calm yet sharp, could destroy a career with a few words. The newspapers referred to him as a captain of industry, but between the lines, one could read predator. In the kitchen, Maria, the housekeeper, was silently busy. A small woman with her hair pulled back in a bun. Her impeccably white apron concealed the years of fatigue etched into her shoulders. It had been 8 years that she worked for Victor. 8 years of blending into the walls, anticipating his every move, existing only in the shadows. She knew everything about his habits. 2 drops of milk in his Sunday coffee, none the rest of the week. The newspapers arranged alphabetically on the coffee table, the ties according to the mood of the day. She could have written a manual about him. And yet, he knew nothing about her, not even her last name. But that morning, something was wrong. Maria had slept badly. The night had been filled with nightmares. Blurry, violent images, screaming figures, a car skidding in the darkness, blood on the asphalt. And above all, that scream. High-pitched, deep, inhuman. The kind of scream that resonates deep in your stomach, that wakes you up in a sweat without even knowing why. She knew this feeling, this presentiment. She had felt it 30 years earlier, the day his daughter, Angela, had been knocked down by a car on her way out of school. An old pain, but never healed. A scar that reopens when fate approaches, silent, ready to strike. So this morning, as she poured the black coffee into the fine china cup, his hands were shaking. When Victor's heavy footsteps echoed off the marble lobby, she placed the tray on the sideboard, but instead of backing away as usual, she stood there, straight, still, frozen by an old, familiar fear. Victor approached, wearing a dark coat, ready to grab his cup and head towards the car waiting for him in the driveway. But he stopped dead in his tracks. "Maria? What are you doing? You're blocking the way." His voice was annoyed, like that of a man whose perfect morning routine is being disturbed. She looked up. It was the first time that she dared to look at him like that, straight in the eyes. He read something he had never seen in her. Determination, yes, but above all, anxiety. "Sir, I beg you, don't go into town today." He narrowed his eyes, surprised by the almost pleading tone. "Excuse me? Stay here? Just for today? Please." He stared at her, first with astonishment, then with icy contempt. "Since when do servants give orders, Maria? I have a crucial meeting. My time is worth more than your annual salary. Step aside." But she didn't move. She was trembling. Yes, but she didn't give in. Her lips trembled with a truth she didn't know how to express. "This isn't for me. It's for you. What you're about to discover there could destroy everything." And leaden silence settled in. The clock in the hall ticked 1 second, 2, 3. Victor's gaze hardened. He abruptly stepped around her, grabbed his keys, and said coldly, without even turning around, "You're lucky to be so discreet usually. Don't do it again." The gate of the manor house opened automatically with a metallic rumble. The black Bentley, gleaming and imposing like a steel beast, roared down the driveway lined with carefully trimmed cypress trees. The sky was overcast, the air saturated with a strange electricity. Something floated, elusive, in the atmosphere. But 100 meters away, a silhouette cut through the morning air. A boy, frail, out of breath, was running breathlessly. He was holding something in his hands, an old leather notebook, worn at the edges, trembling with his steps. He was only 12 years old. His name was Enzo. He was running for his grandmother, for a truth buried too long. Seeing the car approaching, he stood in the middle of the driveway, panting, his face lined with exertion. The driver, surprised, braked sharply. The Bentley skidded slightly on the wet gravel before coming to a stop with a dull screech. The door slammed violently. Victor got out, furious, his gaze dark, his elegance wrinkled by tension. "Are you completely crazy, kid? Do you want to end up under the wheels?" Enzo, trembling, looked up. His cheeks were red, his lips trembled, but he remained upright. He held out the notebook, as one would a talisman. "Sir, my grandmother, she told me to give this to you. She said you had to read it today. Otherwise it would be too late." Victor stared at him, ready to dismiss him with an annoyed gesture. But his eyes settled on the child's. There was something inexplicably familiar in that gaze. A familiar shadow, an echo of the past. He almost snatched the notebook from Enzo's hands, growled, turned around, and got back in the car without a word. The door slammed again. The engine purred, but he didn't immediately give the order to leave. He opened the notebook. The smell of old leather mingled with that of faded ink. And there, on the first page, a fine, delicate, feminine handwriting stopped him in his tracks. It was his mother's handwriting. "Today I made a decision that no one must know. I took in a pregnant girl. Her name is Maria. My husband must never learn that the child she is carrying is his." Victor felt an icy pressure envelop him, as if the air around him had thinned. He reread the lines. Once, twice, 3 times. His hands trembled. His usually relentless heart pounded violently against his chest. He turned the pages feverishly. Everything was there. The dates matched buried memories. The places corresponded to those of his childhood summers in the countryside. Photos, pasted between the pages, showed a smiling young woman, Maria. Younger, her eyes shining with a light that life had long since extinguished. And then, a baby in her arms. An infant with dark eyes, a familiar face. Victor understood without wanting to understand. Gabrielle Delcourt, her beloved mother, gentle and discreet, had hidden an immense truth, a secret that even death had not taken away. She had protected Maria from the icy gaze of her husband, Paul Delcourt, the authoritarian, uncompromising patriarch, absolute master of the family empire. Paul, this man who crushed lives like ants under his polished boots. Maria had not been a simple servant. She had been his victim, his prey, his forced mistress, and the child she had given birth to, in a hidden house in the countryside. This child entrusted to another family, under another name to protect him. It was him, Victor. A silent scream tore through his mind. Everything changed. His world, his name, his foundations, everything collapsed in an instant. Maria was not his maid. Maria was his mother. Victor didn't show up for his meeting. He didn't even bother to notify his team or cancel the meticulous schedule that usually governed his days. He simply turned around, like returning to the scene of a crime or a birth. When he re-entered the manor, the air seemed different, less cold, less heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Maria was still there, standing in the middle of the great hall, straight, dignified, still. Her hands clasped in front of her betrayed suppressed nervousness, but her gaze remained calm, resolute. She was waiting for him. Victor advanced slowly. He placed the leather notebook with infinite care on the mahogany console, as one would place a sacred relic. His eyes searched hers. Why didn't you tell me anything?" His voice was hoarse, broken, no longer a reproach, a plea. Maria looked down, as if she knew this question would come eventually, as if she had been dreading it her whole life. "Because I saw you become the man your father wanted you to be," she said softly. "Cold, ruthless, lonely. I never knew if, knowing who I was, you would have been able to love me, or even look at me differently." Victor tensed. His jaw tightened, his breath caught. You should have told me. And you would have believed me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Or would you have thrown me out, like you did me? You were his son, his reflection, his heir. I was invisible to you. Just the right one, silent, docile, always in my place. It was simpler that way." A terrible silence fell over the hall. A silence that seemed to devour the columns, the paintings, the gilding. Victor bowed his head. He no longer had any armor. No more certainties. All his life, he had believed himself to be the product of a triumphant lineage, the heir to an empire built on honor, hard work, and strength. But all that was just a facade, a lie built on the humiliation of one woman and the silence of another. He was not the legitimate son of Paul Delcourt. He was Maria's son, the son of the woman he had never seen as anything other than a piece of decor, a discreet presence in the corridors of his life. He took a step toward her, then another, slowly, as if each gesture demanded an inner struggle from him. And for the first time in his life, Victor placed a hand on another human being's shoulder with tenderness, a clumsy, trembling, but sincere tenderness. "Mom." The word, spoken in a low voice, echoed like a tremor in space. Maria closed her eyes. A sob rose within her, irrepressible, violent, liberating. 8 years living under the same roof as her own son, never being able to call him by his name. 8 years hiding behind an apron, stifling every maternal instinct so as not to upset the precarious balance of lies. She collapsed against him, and he held her in his arms. Tightly, for the first time, like a son. That day, Victor canceled all his appointments. He silenced his phone, his advisors, his ambitions. He sat down. He listened to her. He let her talk for hours. Maria recounted everything. The fear, the humiliation, the exile, the birth, the tearing away of her son. Then the years of silence. Her return to the manor, under a different name, in a different capacity, simply to stay close to him. To see him live, from afar. Victor also discovered that Enzo, the quiet little boy he had only met a few times, was his grandson. His blood. His only true family. 3 months later, the Delcourt Manor was no longer the same. The gilding remained. The chandeliers still shone, but another light inhabited the place. Maria was no longer the maid. She was the mistress of the house. She walked with her head held high, welcomed guests, rearranged the rooms with confidence. Her name now appeared on the plaque at the entrance. Enzo had his own room in the West Wing. A real child's room, with books, games, and a piano he timidly tried his hand at. Sometimes Victor accompanied him on the violin. They laughed. They discovered each other. As for Victor, he had started to repair. He had created a foundation in Gabrielle and Maria's name, dedicated to mothers in distress. He had donated part of his shares to an international orphanage, in the very country where he had been briefly sent as a child. He had changed the rules at his company, reforming the culture of domination inherited from his father. He had learned to look at others, to see, to feel. And one morning, at 7:30 sharp, like every day, he went down to the kitchen. Maria was waiting for him, a smile on her lips. She served him his black coffee, just as she always had. But today he took it from her hands, gently, and kissed her on the cheek. "Thank you, Mom." It all began with a simple, trembling voice, one summer morning at the foot of the stairs. "Sir, I beg you don't go into town today." And, against all odds, he had listened.